Hey, welcome. So, today we're going to dig into something fascinating. We're not talking about what you think, but how you think. We're going to unpack 5 psychological signs of what's called low cognitive flexibility. You know, the signs that our minds might be just a little more rigid than we like to admit. All right, let's get into it. Okay, I want you to start right here with this feeling. We've all had it, right? Someone challenges an idea you have and bam! Before you can even really think about their words, there's that jolt, that tightness, that feeling of resistance. It's a really specific and very, very human moment.
So what is that? What does that silence, that feeling in your chest actually mean? Well, it's not really about who's right or who's wrong. It's about how our minds are wired to react when our picture of the world gets questioned. It kind of pulls back the curtain on the architecture of our own thinking.
Okay, so let's jump into the first sign, what we can call the certainty trap. And listen, this isn't about having healthy confidence. This is something different. It's that feeling of being absolutely 100% certain about, well, pretty much everything. And that feeling? It turns out that can be a huge red flag.
So what's the psychology behind this? It's something called the overconfidence bias. And it's this wild paradox. The less you actually know about a topic, the more you feel like you know everything. Your brain literally doesn't see the gaps in your knowledge. It just mistakes its own little island of information for the entire continent.
And this quote just nails the opposite way of thinking, doesn't it? Real cognitive flexibility isn't about knowing it all. It's actually about knowing that you don't. It's about always keeping that little door in the back of your mind cracked open, just in case some new information needs to find its way in.
All right, let's move on to sign number 2, which builds right on top of the first one. It's all about how you treat a conversation. Do you see it as a battle to be won? When someone presents new evidence, is your first instinct to learn from it, or is it to see it as an attack that you have to fight off?
And this really isn't about how smart you are. It's about ego. For a rigid thinker, changing your mind feels like losing. Your belief is part of your identity. But for a flexible thinker, a belief is just a tool. And hey, when you find a better tool, you use it, right? For them, consistency isn't about stubbornly sticking to an old idea. It's about consistently trying to find what's true. Now, we got to pause here for a second because this is important. As you're listening to this, your brain's probably going, oh yeah, I know somebody exactly like that. And that's totally natural. But the whole point is that these habits are basically invisible from the inside. They don't feel like problems. They feel like strength. They feel like confidence. So the real work, the real challenge, is to turn that lens around and point it at ourselves. So with that in mind, let's get into the next 3 signs. Think of these as more subtle habits. They're like mental shortcuts that can team up to really limit our ability to grow. Okay, so sign number 3 is oversimplifying everything. Using words like always or obviously, it's basically a shortcut to avoid the hard work of actually thinking through something complex. Then there's sign 4, a lack of curiosity. This happens when we start to think that not knowing is a weakness, something to hide, instead of what it really is, a chance to learn something new. And finally, sign number 5, blaming other people. When every single mistake or failure has some external cause, it becomes impossible to ever see your own role in what happened. I really love this quote. It just gets right to the heart of it. The simple answer, the easy answer, it feels good in the moment, but it's almost never the real one. True intelligence isn't scared of the messy, complicated gray areas. In fact, that's where it thrives. And that ties right into the antidote for blaming others, metacognition. This is such a huge part of intelligence. It's the ability to kind of step outside of yourself and look at your own thoughts and actions honestly. It's making that critical shift from asking what went wrong to asking, okay, what was my role in this? So, we've gone through all these signs. What's the big takeaway here? What's the one thing that really separates a rigid mind from a truly intelligent one? At the end of the day, it all comes down to this: a willingness to be wrong. Real, genuine intelligence has nothing to do with appearing smart or having all the answers. It's about having the courage to admit you were wrong when new information comes along. It's about making learning the priority, not being right. And we'll leave it on this powerful thought, because really, the moment we decide we're done, that we know enough, that is the exact moment we stop growing. The feeling of I don't know is the engine of intelligence, and the feeling of I already know, well, that's the brake. So I'll just leave you with this question. And it's not to judge yourself, but just to get curious. Which one of these 5 signs rings a bell for you? The certainty trap? Avoiding changing your mind? Oversimplifying things? A lack of curiosity? Or blaming others?
Just answering that question honestly to yourself, that's the first real